Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're testing out these 500 Smith& Wesson special reloads that I have made. Now normally when you shoot this 500 with standard 500 Smith& Wesson, it feels like you're getting hit in the palm with a hammer. Um, so basically I reload these, basically I power them down a little bit so that they're a little bit more manageable, a little bit more fun to shoot. Um, Now the interesting thing here is not only have I reloaded these, but I've actually cast the bullets themselves. So these are lead bullets that I made myself. They're 440 grains, and I've loaded this with 13 grains of unique. Okay. Now normally, 13 grains of unique is not that far off from like when I reload 44 Magnum. I put about 10 grains of unique, but that's a 240 grain bullet. This is a 440 grain bullet, so this is twice as heavy as the 44 Magnum bullets I normally shoot, and it still is taking an extra 13 grams of powder. So basically, what I'm shooting at is a rim over there. This is a fresh rim with no holes in it because I want to see what it does to it, and at the same time I'm running it through a chronogram. Now, mind you, we're not shooting standard 500 here. We're shooting 500 special. Basically, I have powered it down so it's a little bit more enjoyable to shoot. Now, I'm shooting about 10 feet back from my chronograph because I don't want the blast to interfere with the velocity. So every time you're shooting, you have to shoot about 8 to 10 feet back. Okay, that's 5 shots. I mean, I can still feel the stinging in my hand. So even with the 13 grains of unique, I mean, it's still a pretty stout load. It's still slapping your hand pretty hard, but it's not as bad as like with the regular 500. When I shoot that, basically you're feeling it in your hand for like the next, 3 or 4 days. I'm going to move the camera up a little bit now, and we'll talk about what I've done with this. Okay, welcome back. So I got the rim here, and did not penetrate it. It is a heavy rim. This is probably like off a pickup truck or something, but bent it in pretty good over here. When I shoot the standard 500, it usually gets full penetration on here. So let's talk about the, first of all, let's talk about the bullet. This is the bullet which I made, 440 grains, and the way I made it is by basically I took molten lead and I poured it into this, when it was hot. And then basically you pop it open, you drop it into a wet towel, and that's how you get your lead bullet. Now, mind you that this lead is pretty soft. When you buy the 500 bullets, right, the factory-made ones, they're usually hardened. Okay, so that's probably another reason why the standard 500 really like just rips through that rim like it's nothing. So these are the bullets. Now, when I make these bullets, I also have to run them. After I make them, I have to run them through a die because not all the bullets come out exactly the same diameter. Sometimes they swell, so I gotta run it through a die that will basically shave them down to make sure that they are the right diameter to fit into this, into the 500. Okay. Here's the thing: when you do, like, usually when I make the bullets, I'll do it like in the fall or in the winter, because basically you're working with hot lead, and you don't want to do it in the summertime when it's hot out. So I'll usually do that kind of work in the wintertime. But then when you try to resize it, when you try to run them through your die to make sure that they're the right diameter, that's something you want to do in the summertime. So usually I'll put them on the side, and around the summertime I'll get back to them, because what happens is after this lead basically is out and the temperature's cold, this really becomes very hard to run through the die to resize them. So in the summertime, basically, things warm up a little bit. The sun beats, let the sun hit them for a little while, and then I'll have a much easier time running these through the die to resize them. So that's a little trick that I figured out to make my life easier. So that's how I make the bullets. On the, I like using Unique. Unique is an awesome powder because it is the most versatile. You can reload everything from 25 ACP to the 500 Smith & Wesson. And the thing that makes Unique awesome is that it does not require compression to work. So, for example, the standard powder that you're supposed to use for 500 is Win 296, and I think it takes something like 41 or 42 grains. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember. I'm just going off memory. But it gives you a set powder, and let's say it's somewhere between 42 and 43. And it has to be in that range. You can't put less than that, because if you put less than that, you actually end up with squib loads, because basically the Win 296 requires compression in order for it to work. So you can't make 500 Smith & Wesson 500 specials. That you can't power it down with the standard powders that you're supposed to use with this, because Unique does not require compression. Basically, I can fill these cases up halfway, and they'll still work. So that's why, you can use this for your 38 specials, because your 38 special is usually, half the case is empty. Even your 357s, your 44 Magnums. With the 44 Magnums, I usually use 10 grains of this over a, with a 240 grain bullet. Okay. Now here's the thing. When you look in the book, right, at the recipes, they only go as high as 44 Magnum. I have not been able to find a recipe for 454 Casull or for the 500 Smith & Wesson. However, because this does not require compression, what I was able to do is start with the 10 grains that I use for the 44 Magnum, because it's pretty close, let's say to the 454 to 500. And actually, I didn't even start with the 500. I started reloading the 454 first, which is even closer to the 44 Magnum, and basically I worked it up from there. Basically, having a chronograph for something like this is very important, because you want to make sure that your loads aren't running too hot. The nice thing about the 500, okay, is that you will run out of muscle before you run out of gun, okay? Because when you shoot this with full loads, basically it feels like you're getting hit in the hand with a hammer, and that's at the low end of what they typically prescribe, okay? So as you're working your way up, basically you're going to get a lot more recoil than you can handle, before you reach a point where basically you're gonna overload the gun. So as long as you work your way up slowly, you'll be fine. Starting off with like I had now mind you, I had a very heavy bullet that I cast myself, 440 grains. When I load this with the factory bullets, I think they're 385 grains. And the last time I reloaded this, I reloaded that with 15 grains of Unique. So basically, it was a lighter bullet. I had 2 extra grains of Unique, and that shot very well. It was pretty manageable. But the thing is, when you're buying lead is very expensive. When you're buying lead bullets. Okay, if you're buying like lead bars that you're melting down, then the bullets become cheap. So here's the thing with reloading. If you're buying bullets, okay, you're buying factory bullets, you want to buy the lightest bullets possible. Okay, and work with a recipe that's going to require more gunpowder. Okay, so you rather have it's cheaper for you to have a light bullet that you're using more gunpowder for, because basically the gunpowder is cheaper than factory lead bullets. However, if you are making your own lead, like I've made here, right? If you're making your own lead, um, basically the lead is cheaper than the gunpowder. Okay, so in that case, I want the heaviest bullet possible, and I want to use the least amount of gunpowder possible. Okay, with this formula that I used here, with the 13 grains of unique over a 440 grain lead bullet, um, I had an average velocity of 915 feet per second, and that comes out to an energy of 818 foot-pounds. So just over 800 foot-pounds with the with the with this recipe that I had. Now, you might say, listen, that comes pretty close to the 44 Magnum. Maybe that doesn't seem so impressive to you. But here's the thing: when you consider the momentum, okay, the momentum is basically the velocity times the mass divided by 7,000. Basically, I'm getting about 57. And I forgot what I think it's feet second. I forgot what but basically I'm getting a momentum of like 57. And when you consider that an AR-15 has a momentum of like 22 or 24, I mean, it delivers a lot of momentum. Okay, so that's one of the things when you look at when you're doing energy calculations, right? If you start using really heavy bullets, don't just look at the energy. Okay, look also at the momentum, because basically that heavy bullet kind of takes on a personality all of its own. You know, the this recipe that I had here with the 13 grains of unique over the 440. I mean, I felt it pretty stiff in the hand. And I'm not a small guy. I mean, this gun had plenty of recoil. I'm thinking of, I actually had tried this with 15 grains of unique earlier. When I tried it with 15 grains of unique, I had an energy of 976 foot-pounds. So approaching 900 and a momentum of 59, or close to 60 actually. It averaged closer to 60. This is, basically this is a reloader's gun. I mean, if you're gonna buy a gun like this, whether it's a 454 or a 500, you pretty much have to get into reloading, because the gun is way too expensive to shoot if you're not reloading. You're not going to get to shoot it that often. The 460 is actually built on the same frame as the 500. If I had this to do over again, I would probably get the 460. The reason is, with the 460, the 460 is basically, its parent round is the 454 Casull, and the parent round of the 454 Casull is the 45 Long Colt. And all of 45 Long Colt, 454 Casull, and 460 all use a 45 ACP bullet. So that's a very cheap bullet to buy. You can buy that like 500 rounds at a time. And get a value deal on that. You can buy that economically at 500 rounds at a time, or even 1,000 bullets at a time for reloading purposes. Okay, so having the 460, basically the power is pretty close to the 500, and it is a lot cheaper to reload, and you don't have to cast your own bullets. With the 500, I pretty much have to cast my own bullets. I also do buy them. But if you're buying bullets, I mean, even the cheapest ones are expensive, But if you're melting lead and making your own bullets, this is a load of fun. So those are my thoughts on the 500 Smith & Wesson. When you, just for comparison's sake, I mean, the energy I just had out of this was close to about 818. With the 15 grains, it was 876. When you buy full 500 factory ammo, right? That's just a standard 500 Smith & Wesson. The energy on that is close to 1,800 foot-pounds, 1,800 foot-pounds. Okay, so basically you're definitely into rifle power, with 1,800 foot-pounds. So here I've got 800 foot-pounds. The recoil was still pretty stout because basically you're pushing a pretty heavy bullet, and basically just to get this bullet moving is gonna, you know, create a lot of recoil. But some things for you guys to think about, try out. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a member, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.